Hey guys, it's M4J here and welcome back to Global Ventures here on Planet Coaster. Here's me just surveying the two coasters that we built last time, Antony and Cleopatra. Today was meant to be me adding some actual theming to this Egyptian area. Bit of a problem with that though. I went on the Steam Workshop and I went on the Theme Maker's Toolkit, scenery, buildings, every possible option I could think of to try and find some Egyptian pieces that I could use. And there's a lot of ride skins, Egyptian themed flat rides for example. There isn't really any Egyptian pieces. I was hoping for something like a sphinx or a small pyramid, or something that I could just throw in around the rides and make it look really cool. There isn't much of that, so I've put that on the back burner for a little bit. Reason being is, as some of you know, I work for a game developer as well as run M4J. The company is XVI. I always say this differently in each series because I know there's people who find me through Reddit. So you won't have watched OpenTTD, for example. You probably don't even know I play OpenTTD, but I do. Yeah, XVI, we're game developers, and some of us are learning 3D modeling as part of one of the games that we're making. So I might be able to use something like Blender to make my own Egyptian themed pieces, which is why it's kind of on the back foot for now. So yeah, I thought instead of doing the theming, we could do this instead. You have to excuse my voice, I've just eaten. I think I ate a little too fast. Not that you need to know that, of course, but there you go. So yeah, this is Scarab. I actually had a pre-built coaster in mind for this, one that I built a long time ago. I think it was the second coaster I ever built. Yeah, I think that's right. Raid of the Fort, which you can just see there in the background, that was the first coaster I ever built in this game, and the original Scarab was the second coaster I ever built, and at the time I was really happy with it. But then I went back and looked at it again. In fact, I think I copied and pasted it into one of the videos in this series, and oh boy, was the pacing completely off, and it was not what I was expecting at all. I was a little bit shocked by how different it was to what I remember it being. So I thought I'd start again and build a new Scarab. So this one is Scarab Mark II, although it won't be officially called that, it's just Scarab. And usual thing, I'm really happy with the actual layout. The POVs you'll see at the end, there's a POV as if you're sitting in the seat, and then there's a POV that's kind of a rider cam kind of thing, but it doesn't spin. So those of you that are sufferers of motion sickness like I am, you might not want to watch the spinning POV, but you might still want to see what the rider looks like. So I've got two POVs there for you guys to watch. And the POV, the track layout is slightly different in the POV to what you see get built here. That's becoming a staple feature of this series. And also the ride location is slightly different as well. So it's the same ride, I didn't demolish it and completely rebuild it, but I did move it slightly so it's a little bit closer to Cleopatra. Because if I hadn't done that, this area would have been absolutely huge. And I didn't really want it to be absolutely huge, I'd rather it's just slightly huge. So I did some jigging around and moved the ride a little bit. Plus it fits in with the train a little bit nicer in its new spot as well. So I'm quite happy with that. And then it does mean that once we do some terraforming and start adding some scenery in, the whole ride in line with the other two coasters in this area will start to make a little bit more sense. Again, for those of you that have just discovered the series, this is the Valley of the Nile section of the park. It is the Egyptian themed section, which is why I keep talking about Antony, Cleopatra and Scarabs. Very much the mummy kind of vibe going with the Scarab. This is kind of a family friendly coaster though. It's the Global Ventures twist really. It's a family coaster, but it's been ramped up to 11. Because it's kind of what this park is. It's taking bog standard coasters and just turning the knob right the way up as far as it can go to make it a little bit more extreme. And that's pretty much what I've done with all the coasters in this park, and I'm quite happy with that. We will have some flat rides as well that are a little bit tamer, and the Vibes of the Bahamas, oh, the Vibes of the Island, sorry, it's now called, section in the middle of the park is kind of the kids zone anyway. So it's not like Thorpe Park where there's nothing for kids, but it's also not like Chesington where everything's for kids. It's more, there's a kids area, and then there's all around it there's thrill rides for other members of the family, let's say. So let's talk about Scarab a little bit. It is a spinning coaster. It's probably, I think it's based on the Marathon model of spinning coaster. Because I think Gerstlauer, the seats face inwards, whereas Maurer, the seats face outwards. I don't think they're called Maurer anymore. I think they're just called Maurer Rides. I can't remember. They kind of disappeared off the face of the earth for a while. They're the same company that built Dragon's Fury at Chessington and Spinball Whizzer at Alton Towers. And I believe they're also the company that built the X-Car coasters, so like G-Force at Drayton Manor. Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, which some people say is a stupid name, but I think it's in-fitting with its theme. You know, it's basically themed to nothing, so why not give it a nothing name? I think it actually works quite well. But yeah, that's not the point. The point is, it's a spinning coaster model. It has 2 lift hills, mainly because of the fact that I really didn't plan this coaster out. I literally just started building it and very, very much fluked it actually working. A lot of enthusiasts will probably call this block break the ride as well. I think that's harsh. Again, Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, people call that block break the ride. They don't really understand about capacity. You know, you have to run a certain number of trains in order to be able to reach your hourly capacity. In order to do that, you need block breaks. Not everybody seems to understand that. But yeah, this ride is very much block break heavy. I think there's 12, maybe 13 blocks in total. Might even be more than that, thinking about it. Plus there is 2 lift hills. And originally I wasn't keen on the idea of 2 lift hills. You saw at the very beginning of the episode here, actually, I built the lift hill a bit too high, the first one. So I lowered it, and I kind of wish I'd left it high, because we might have been able to work with that still. But then Dragon's Fury at Chessington also has 2 lift hills. So once I kind of reminded myself of that fact, I don't feel as bad about it anymore. I did also try and make each section of the ride be slightly different from the previous section. So we have got the 90-degree overbank turn. I think every spinning coaster has to have that these days. It's pretty much the law. And that's my favourite feature on Dragon's Fury and Spinball Whizzer. I really, really like that overbank turn. It's such a unique feeling, particularly if you're sitting on the outside seat. When it gets to the top, you really do feel that moment of weightlessness before it drags you back down again. So I'm a big fan of that, and I've always tried to include it on any spinning coaster that I build. So, you know, it was obviously going to find its way on here somewhere. So having the first drop be kind of like a pre-drop, and then having the second drop be the big one. Well, it's technically the third one, because we have the drop out at the station as well, which is something most spinning coasters don't have, is a drop out at the station. Normally they go straight into the lift hill, but I kind of wanted there to be a little bit more flavour to the beginning of the ride than just a lift hill. So we put a little pre-drop kind of thing in there as well, and a little overbank turn, and then a sudden dive down under the track. This ride is full of head choppers, which again I was really pleased with, and I've got this little trick track section that you can see me building here as well. It was meant to get the car to spin, but it's actually had the opposite effect. It makes the car stop. But again, I'm not entirely opposed to that, because trick track is meant to sort of catch you off guard and unaware. But if you're facing backwards, there's kind of limitations as to what you can make the track do. It's one of the reasons why Indiana Jones and the Temple of Peril at Disneyland Paris, when they turned the cars backwards, so that you rode the ride backwards, they had to actually change the profile of the track to make the drops and curves less severe. Because if your body isn't braced for something like that, it can cause serious damage. So, kind of had to bear that in mind when I was building this as well. Instead of the spinning effect that I wanted with the trick track, it kind of leads to this bouncing, floating kind of effect, which I think is also quite cool. Plus there's this overbank turn that I'm building here as well, which again was supposed to make the car spin. It's been a long time since I did sort of advanced physics, so you can tell I got my calculations slightly wrong, in that I didn't do any calculations. So again, it kind of locks the car in place, but that's not a bad thing, because the overbank turn that you see on the left hand side of the screen there can also lock the car in place. It depends on the weight distribution. I don't actually know how the game engine for Planet Coaster works regarding spinning cars. Does it always spin the same, or does it depend on who's riding in what seat? I also don't know if you can have just 3 people ride on the coaster, because that does affect the dynamics of the spinning. If there's only 3 people, it kind of creates an imbalance, which then creates the spinning. It's really, really complicated to explain how these things work, but it's very, very clever when you break it down to the bare bones. It is all to do with weight distribution and to do with centrifugal forces. And again, it's been a long time since I did that kind of thing, so I will do a very bad job of explaining it. But those of you that are interested, those of you who are interested, I'll try that sentence again in English, shall I? I do suggest that you go read about it, because it is a very interesting subject. It might not look it. You might just look at a spinning coaster and think, it's just a family ride. But ignoring the Mack coaster, the Mack ride spinning coaster, because that tends to be, I think they've got motors in the wheel bogies that creates the spinning. I know Timekeeper at Silver Dollar City has some kind of mechanism that actually makes the car spin, rather than it being an organic reaction spin. But Gerstlauer and Maurer, their spinning coasters are entirely based on weight distribution. So again, I kind of tried to create that with this ride. I don't know if it worked or not. But yeah, I am a big fan of this ride. I think it's worked out really, really well. The pacing is perfect. Just as a car reaches the brake, the one in front clears the next block. I genuinely didn't plan it that way. I think there was one little section that I had to tweak, and I had to change the speed of the first lift hill. The second one is the same speed as the first one was. It was 10 miles an hour. I think the first one is now 9. The second one is still 10. And I think I had to change the layout of the final brakes that run into the station as well. But everything else is pretty much how you see it being built here on the screen. Obviously I did the smoothing of the curves and things like that. There's a couple of... well, I was about to say there's a couple of airtime moments. I don't know if my game is glitched, but all my coasters appear to have 0 seconds of airtime right now. And like no airtime moment and 0 seconds of airtime. So I checked that on Bandito, Manic Miner, Cleopatra, Antony, and Scarab, because they were the rides I was checking at the time. And according to that, none of them have airtime moments. And I struggle to believe that. There's definitely, like the hill that you see me building underneath here, that has to invoke some kind of airtime. All humps on a roller coaster can create moments of airtime. So I don't know what's going on there. I'll see if there's a known bug to do with that. Maybe it is just I haven't built it with airtime. I would struggle to believe that, but I also wouldn't put it past me. So here's me trying to build the end of the ride. Again, it's to do with pacing. Each block is about 8 seconds long. So I was trying to make this last block also be 8 seconds long. What I actually ended up doing was creating extra holding breaks before the final station. And kind of extending the size of this final block. Well, I say extending it. I was moving it further away from the station so I could fit more brakes in. So basically, if there is a hold up for whatever reason, cars can stack without it causing the ride to go into complete shutdown. That was the idea, and it has to an extent worked. So I am quite pleased with that. And this does feel like one of the most realistic coasters I've built in this park. There are still moments that don't quite feel like they would fit in with other coasters of this type, but overall I would definitely ride this ride first if I was going to Global Ventures. I think it's a really nice, fun, just, it's not extreme, it's not trying to break records or anything like that. It's just good, fun, easy to ride, all ages can go on it. And I think some coasters around the world, particularly in America, they do kind of forget that sometimes. Disney are the best at building coasters for the whole family. Universal are starting to get there now with rides like Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure. I would call that a family coaster. Some people say it's got good moments of airtime, and the drop track does put it in a different league, but I would still call that a very good, very well designed and very well executed family coaster. Then you've got kind of theme parks like Six Flags, where they don't really focus on family coasters anymore. And Cedar Point have just forgotten families exist, and they're just trying to break world records all the time, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but I feel like you still got to have that balance, because if you stop kids from being able to go to the park, then you also stop a lot of early 20s people with kids, because there's nothing for the kids to do. So it's always something to bear in mind, and Global Ventures is definitely going to have these little coasters here and there that will be fun for all the family. But yeah, this is it for the time lapse. So the POVs are going to start shortly. It's going to be the first person POV first, so if you are someone who suffers from motion sickness, I would suggest you skip forward I think it's about 2 minutes, but I would check just to be sure. I would say I'd put a timestamp in, but I'm guaranteed to forget that. But yeah, enjoy the POV, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. Drop some comments down below with ideas for future episodes. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to the channel, thank you guys for your continued support. Once again, enjoying the POVs, and until next time, I will see you soon.